Hey, buddy, it's Dan Mori with Staffing Monthly, the industry's only digital publication that brings you actionable insights from thought leaders about the areas of mindset, recruiting, marketing, sales, leadership. And we're going to be digging really into mindset because we're in this weird time in our industry right now that we've been we've been woken up because there's been a major shift and everyone's sort of reeling trying to figure out what do I need to do, and it's causing a little bit of mental paralysis and fear and confusion that's leading to some anxiety, some burnout, some it's just we're a little bit in disarray. We're reeling, and what's happening in the market, it's leading to the industry being diminishing demand for staffing services, and we have to turn it around if we're going to reinvent the next best version of ourselves. And on that topic, I had a chance to meet somebody in person that was the keynote speaker for the NJSA, their leadership event just a couple months ago at the Hard Rock in Atlantic City. And I was truly blown away, not just by the energy that this guy brings to the room and how hyped up that he can get a bunch of staffing people, which if you've been to a staffing conference, you know that that is no small feat, but also the story. And there's this central part of his story that we're going to dig into today that is something that I hope everybody listening can find in their own lives and take action on. But before I do that, I want to talk a little about him because he does not have your typical staffing journey. He actually is a highly decorated former New York State law enforcement. He was present for 9/11, was on the ground in the city, and has some amazing stories that he'll get into a little bit that we might all get a little emotional. I'm not going to lie. But in addition to that, he actually left that career, went into a direct sales career, which is, in my opinion, a 180-degree polar opposite when I think about police professionals. And he built an amazing direct sales organization, literally millions of dollars in annual revenue, international organization, really leading 1,400 people. So this is a gentleman that had to reinvent himself. And I don't want to steal the thunder as to why he had to do it or what that catalytic moment was. But David Atkins, I am grateful to have you here and welcome you to Staffing Monthly. And thanks for
Th-
being here.
Thank you, Dan. It's an absolute honor, and I did have a great time at the event. I'm so glad I got to connect with you, meet you in person, talk a little bit after I spoke. But I'm excited to be here. I love the staffing industry because I've spoken at a handful of staffing events in different states and even privately for some of them, and it's a great group of people. And I love that mindset is part of it because it's definitely something that I know we all can use in the staffing industry right now. Absolutely. So let's get into it. Yeah.
I love it. I'm gonna hit you with some hard questions, man, because I know you can take it. So before we jump right into it, I do want to let the audience know that David actually has his second book coming out. He published his first book that talked a little bit about his journey and really the key decision that we're going to get into. But he's got a second book coming out here in a couple of days. There's going to be a link to it below. I highly recommend reading it. It is transformational. It is a playbook to take action in your life to really achieve powerful results and maybe even reinvent a better version of yourself. So, but David, just as we get into it, let's just talk about your journey in a
Mm,
summary. Like you were a law enforcement, you had a
right.
great career, you had no reason to change. Why did you go there, and what caused you to kind of change into a different path for your life?
I absolutely love it. So, yes, I am a retired New York State Police captain. I did 22 years with the state police. And my journey really changed back probably in 2010. I had about 12 years on the New York State Police. And my wife and I share, and I always want to be vulnerable because I think a lot of times people aren't vulnerable, especially online, right? I was struggling. I was six figures in debt. My wife and I were six figures in debt. We were living paycheck to paycheck. You know, that whole saying, when you make more, you spend more. Well, we were the epitome
Yeah.
of that. Making a good salary. My wife was a school teacher with her master's degree, making good money. We had two kids going on three, and we would argue and bicker and have things, that we would disagree on, like as little as the grocery bills. And I just remember at that point, like I can't live like this. Like my entire life from my childhood, when one of the stories I share was saving up for a batting cage and having the vision to do that at 12 years old and saving up for that. Like I've always been about setting a vision, having goals, and trying to be better in life. And there I was at a point in my life where my marriage, I said it wasn't like we were talking about divorce, Dan, but it was at a point where like something needed to change or else we could be heading down that path. And I had one vivid conversation, which I'll never forget. And I had all the fear that came with it, thinking, I need to talk to my wife, say, this isn't working out. We need to change something. I don't want to head down this path. And I had the fear and self doubt that she wasn't going to hear me out. And I think it was important that I share, and I'll share it here, is I did it when my kids were asleep, not at 6 o'clock at the crazy time when everybody's busy running around. Like it was after 9 o'clock at night, sitting her down in the kitchen, looking her in the eye and saying something needs to change. Like we can't live like this. We're not meant to live like this. And that decision to do that took us to the first thing that we said we wanted to do is to take care of our physical health because she struggled with her baby weight, losing with having kids. And I, in law enforcement was about 20 pounds heavier than I am now. And it started with that moment, making the decision then to start exercising every single morning. And we did a program called P90X from
Yeah,
Beachbody.
man.
People joke PX90. And we did it, and we got up before our kids got up. That was the first thing going, okay, that's the only time we're going to be able to get this done is 5 a.m. And we made the decision to do that workout program, and we got amazing results. And what started happening is in our relationship, we became better because we had more energy, we were less stressed, we were better with each other, just we were managing the day effectively because we felt better. Like I'm a big believer, yes, the physical results are great, but the byproduct, because of the stress of life and kids, all of that was clearly, was better than just the physical results. And at the same time, and I'll continue to go on, Dan. I know it's long, but it's kind of what happened is we started seeing that there was a business opportunity with this direct sales, multi-level marketing company, Beachbody. And I think it's important to share that I looked into it and everybody told me, you're wasting your time. It's a pyramid scheme.
Pyramid
Don't do
scheme.
it.
Yeah, all that stuff.
Nobody's going
Yeah.
to support you. All of those things. But I was at this point going, you know what? I control. I have this vision. I'm in debt. You know what? I can't let other people's opinions become my reality. And I went for it. And we dove into this business, and in 2 years, we paid off the six figures in debt. And then years later, we became $1 million earners and built a team to 1,400 people. And then I like to say for me that I feel God revealed a gift to me I didn't know I had, which was speaking, because Beachbody started asking me to speak at their events and conferences. And I did that for like 10 years it started with 20 people and then it was 20,000 people. And then I had people in my ear again saying, you have a gift to speak. You bring energy. Have you ever thought of being a speaker? And I kind of laughed out loud because I had three daughters at this point. Like I ran an entire county with the state police. We handled 400,000 to 500,000 911 calls a year. And I'm like, are you crazy? But again, I felt that tug like, you know what? I can maybe move on to a new chapter and make a bigger impact. And I leaned into it. I say I fueled my faith and starved my fears, and leaned in and took that leap of faith. And in 2020 into 21, and now the last 4 years, I wrote my first book, speaking to thousands of people with big companies all over the country. With my second book, The One Decision Away Philosophy, coming out today. But I think the important point, and to drive home now, is this: if I didn't make the decision to talk to my wife back then, I wouldn't even be on this podcast today. And I say that because I'm a big believer that we all have a pressing decision in our life right now. And back then, for me, it was my marriage, and we all have it. And if we can make that one decision, I'm a big believer life will reveal to you what's next. And it doesn't mean if you approach the marriage to improve it, that you're only going to change your marriage. No, I approached to help my marriage. And it ultimately led to like speaking and books. Life doesn't work linear straight ahead, right?
Yeah.
Takes you
Yeah.
all over. So for me, I'm like, it was a transformational thing, which is now like in my second book, is that there's one decision everybody has right now. If you make it, that will improve all areas of your life, career, business, health, because it happened for me and it's happened for so many others. That's an earful, but that's
I,
kind of the story.
I love that, man. And I love that journey, and I love that you shared it at the NJSA event. And there's a couple things I want to ask about that. So I think a
Hmm.
lot of people can relate to that tension that you might feel in, a relationship in your life. So you said that you knew that you needed to talk to your wife. Like how how long you'd been putting it off? Like it wasn't a feeling you're like you just got it the first time. You're like, okay, I got to do. Like how long were you dragging your feet and putting that conversation off because you were afraid to change?
Years, years, because we were literally, Dan, we were literally taking our debt And this is the game we played for years. We would get we not emails, we'd get mail with 0% credit cards for like 6 months, and we would transfer the debt from one credit card with interest that just expired to the new one that would buy us 6 months. So we're just paying, the prince trying to pay the principal down, but not paying interest. And that shuffle game went on for years.
And you knew,
And
but
then eventually,
when you were doing it, like you had that feeling in the back of your mind, right? Like you just knew internally, like this isn't sustainable, this isn't right, but you keep doing it, right?
yeah, I kept doing it, but I think because I think society today it became the norm. Like, yeah, you have debt, you have student loans, you have double car payments, you have credit card debt. That's the reality of life. And it wasn't until like when we started bicker, it's the grocery bill thing. I remember we lived in a one bedroom home. I was sitting in the hallway. I used to do the bills at the desk in the hallway because we had one bedroom, two kids in one room, a loft we had that became a bedroom. So we had a loft we turned to a bedroom. Two of our daughters were in there. My desk was in the hallway. My wife was downstairs, and there I was, and I'm yelling down to her, and she's yelling back how much we just spent in groceries. And that's when I kind of had a WTF moment, excuse my language. Like, this is crazy. Like, I'm an investigator with the state police, a detective. I'm making six figures. She's making six figures. She has 60 credits over her master's degree, maxed out her teaching salary. And because we were in New York, you make good money as a teacher. I mean, the cost of living is higher, but and
Yeah.
I'm like, this should not be like this. Something's got to change. And that was the light bulb moment, was the grocery argument. And then once I got to Beachbody, the secret, like the big secret, was when they preached. And I said no to this, Dan, for 2 years. I grinded my way in that business to some success. And I hit a wall, like I hit a ceiling. I couldn't get there. And one of my mentors, like, what personal development are you doing to grow your mind? Because one of the vital behaviors of Beachbody, the third vital behavior, is at least 10 minutes a day, invest in personal development.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't need that stuff. I have a great career. Like, it was ego, right? And it wasn't until I said, you know what, I'll give it a try. And I read like my first book, and that opened my eyes to everything, because the person I am right now is not the same David Atkins I was 15 years ago. I have went through such a growth journey in my life, reading hundreds of books, that I learned like that's the secret sauce. It's the mindset piece. So I know that was a long answer, but that's kind of
So
how it happened.
no, I appreciate you sharing that, and again, man, I'm glad that you called out the ego piece because we all got to remember that your ego is not your amigo,
Right.
and
I like that.
and
Yep.
you can use that one royalty free, my friend.
Yeah.
So I want to. So you said you thought in your mind, you had that consternation about how this conversation was going to go with your wife. You kind of had fear about how she might
Total.
respond to it, and you picked a good time. Did you bring it up ahead of time and say, "Hey, I want to have a conversation, tonight or after the kids go to bed," or was it just the kids went to bed and then you just said, "Hey, there's something I need to talk to you about right now"? Like, did you hit her with it or give her any sort of heads up that something
No,
was brewing?
I just hit it with it. It was like
Oh
rip
my
off the
God.
band-aid, the Mel Robbins, the 5 4 3 2 1. Like, I just finally said I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And it was just that moment. And yeah, I remember her saying she wanted to, like, when we decided exercise and we heard about Beachbody, and I was dabbling in P90X a little bit. Like, I said, let's start doing this. Like, I remember her saying she wanted to believe me, because she really did. As her, as me being her husband, she wanted to believe me, but she's like, like the goals and things you're talking about to improve our marriage and get rid of our debt, things like that don't happen to people like us.
Oh
And
man.
she, like, because we just were riding the grind, everybody around us. I mean, I just read yesterday, Dave Ramsey said 78% of people in the country today in the USA are living paycheck to paycheck and don't have $500 to their name to deal with an emergency of their car repair. That's almost 80%. So,
Yeah.
like, I was just doing what everybody else was doing, but I just felt like I don't want to live like this. And I don't know what it was specifically. It just was, I was sick and tired of feeling this way. I had an amazing wife. We had two healthy kids. Like, enough is enough. And it was like that was just a switch, rip the band-aid off. Hey, can we talk tonight? Like, and I just remember sitting her down and saying, listen, I'm not happy. This is not working. And I was scared. I was scared. It was all the negative things. But
But she must have been in the same space, but also afraid to tell you and admit it out loud, right? She must
oh
have been
yeah.
having the So
because she
when
agreed.
you start initiated the conversation, she probably had there was probably a little bit of a barrier to admit it, but then she probably opened up and was like, "Yeah, man, I'm right there with you, right?"
110% because right away she started I started P90X a little, Dan, but then she jumped on board and started doing it together with me. We said, let's be a team. Let's get up in the morning, you get me up, I get you up, and we were exercising together. And listen, like people would say, I didn't need a lot of room. Didn't have a gym membership. Our basement was our kids' playroom. We had a pile of toys in front of a small couch. We would literally shove the toys to the side up against this closet. It was a small house, and we would work out in this small space where like a coffee table can fit, and we would do P90X. It was a very organic thing, but it was the catapult, the decision we made then that changed everything going forward. It just started with, work with what you have with where you are because what you have is plenty, is something I often say. I think, work with what you have with where you are because what you have is plenty. There's something right now, like that was the pressing thing in our life that needed to be addressed.
And I think what you just said there is a good segue into the next piece is that I think a lot of times that people are reluctant to step forward and make those changes is they think they need more than they have to step forward. Like you could have been like, "Oh, we can't do it because I don't have a space to work out. I need to get a gym membership, or I need to get workout clothes, or I need to get," like you could have made all of those excuses,
Yeah,
but you didn't. You said, "No, I just need to do the thing." Right?
correct.
And
And
I
you,
think that's a powerful piece right there. And so one of the things that as I was looking through sort of the kind of the preview of the book, which I'm glad to get I had a copy of that. I'm excited to buy the book and read it as well, just like I did your other one. You there's something that stood out to me, and it was talking about principles over emotions,
yeah.
right? And I think that's hard because a lot of times we're led by emotions. We say, I don't feel like working out today, or I don't feel like having this conversation, or I don't feel like doing the thing that I know I need to do because I don't feel like it. Or there's fear. There's all these emotions that sort of lead us to do different things, but you emphasize principles over emotion. So can you just talk
Mm,
a little bit about like what does
yeah.
that mean and how do people like apply that to their own lives?
No, I love that. And it's funny because that chapter has stuck out to a couple people on podcast. David, principles over emotion. So, you know, at the end of our principles really is a promise. But I like to say at the end of our emotions is really nothing. And what I mean by that is we all know, if we could be objective for a second, that if we are consistent in the behaviors to improve our life, our career, our business, that consistency works. If we're willing to be disciplined to show up on days that things you don't feel like doing things, in the end, the compound effect, things will work out. So if you can anchor on principles where our emotions, at the end of our emotions, is nothing. If we always make our decisions and take action based on our emotions, more times than not, it's not going to work out because more times than not, you're not going to feel like doing the thing. You're not going to feel like working out. You're not going to feel like making that extra phone call at work, sending that one last email. But we know if we always follow our emotions, what does that lead to? It's not going to lead to a success or a better version of you. So I have learned, like I become so mentally strong in my mindset that on days I don't feel like doing things, and the reality is more days than not, you don't.
Yeah.
I have learned to go, you know what? I got to block that out. That's the negative self talk. I know I need to show up today because these are the days that make it count. The principles of showing up on the days you don't want to, and whatever that is in your life, are the days that make it count. And again, the principles, discipline, ownership, consistency, all of those principles of life that are tried and true, I have learned to anchor my behaviors on those and just block out the emotions. And it wasn't easy at first. And I think it's important to say that people got to give themselves grace. I'm not
Yeah.
perfect, but my discipline today has been grown a lot from all the personal development through the years. I mean, there's still days I'm like, holy cow, like, but I learned to just say, all right, let's move forward. It's never perfect. But in the beginning, if you can remember to block out that negative self-talk and to anchor it on those principles, which I talk about in my book, then you will be much better off, in one day later, 2 days later, or 1 week later.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think discipline's a lot like fire. It grows when you
Yeah,
feed it. And so and I think that comes to I think what most people struggle with is you've got this one decision away philosophy because you had this reckoning where you made a key decision in your life and it was kind of set out this domino chain to
right.
become a better version of yourself. But I think a lot of times people think that making the decision is actually the hard part because it feels so difficult to make it, to face yourself in the mirror and get real
Mm,
with yourself and make it. But in my experience, it's actually managing the decision that's
mm.
harder and more essential. So that's where you're talking about, principles over emotions. So can you just, for our audience, try to get as technical as you possibly can on one thing. Talk to a recruiter or a salesperson that might be struggling in their career right now. They might be frustrated and feeling overworked or underappreciated or overwhelmed or burnout. And there's all these emotions are just kind of sending them in different directions. But talk to that person for me for a second. And how would you
Mm.
coach them to build strong principles and put that into their daily life to kind of block out the noise of the emotion for until they can experience some success?
It starts with having a strong why. I truly believe that. For me, the hardest decisions were, for me, I had to anchor it on a why, and it had to be bigger than myself. And what I mean by that is if we always go about making decisions or let that fear creep in when we're just thinking of ourselves, when you hit life and hit something that's a lot tougher than you, in this case, all of the things you just shared, you're just not going to do it. You're going to quit because you don't have that driving force for why you do what you do. But my mindset is like, I have three daughters that need me. I have, when I'm a speaker now and it's late at night, I'm doing stuff, there's world of people that I know my impact, my message can positively impact them. Or writing this book, that pushes me in those times of self-doubt, negativity, to make that decision to go forward. So really, like, one of the things I share is the power of having a strong why and making it about something bigger than yourself. And I think that also goes with people like, I just don't feel motivated. And I always say this, listen, it's backwards. We so often wait for motivation to start, but if you start, you then start feeling motivated. It's
Yeah.
actually the reverse. You have to have a strong why. You make the decision, motivation happens. And I love John Maxwell. I refer to him in this one thing. He says, once you find your why, you find your way. And because we wait to line everything up to its perfect, I can't make the decision, all the negative self-talk, and I need to do all these things first, paralysis of analysis. But for me, every time, like when I decided to make that retirement with the state police, when everybody, Dan, was like, don't do it, you're crazy, you're going to get promoted to major. My family's like, you're going to walk away at 43 years old. You're about to get promoted. All this. For me, my why was an opportunity to serve the world's bigger. My why was the potential for my family to be home more. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to be a keynote speaker. I knew nothing about it. But I said, you know what? I made the decision because my why was there. And then when I made it, I figured it out as I went. So the big thing is I didn't have the motivation. It came after the decision. Number two is I had a big why. And number three is I didn't wait to have everything in order. You figure it out as you go. Does that make sense?
It does, and I think that's an important lesson for people that they need to latch onto. If you're watching this, you're not going to have all the answers up front.
Right.
This is a journey. But you got to take that first step, and you will learn as you go. You're gonna trip up, you're gonna fall short, but just get up and learn from that. And one of the other concepts you mentioned this in Atlantic City, it shows up in your book, and I really love acronyms, so I love this one. When you talked about the FEAR acronym, which is false
Mm,
evidence appearing real,
mm.
you shared this in your story and can kind of maybe unpack that just a little bit for the audience. Like, what was some of the false evidence in your own life that appeared real that was holding you back from maybe making the decision or managing that decision to continue to go on?
I think a big one for people is worrying about what other people will think, and through reading and growing, I've learned that other people's opinions, like I say, are just not your reality. Like I worried about what my parents may think, my family may think, and at the end of the day, if you really think about it, people are so caught up in their own problems and issues that people really aren't thinking about you. And we make so many assumptions, are worried about what people think. And it's just not the case, but that's what traps a lot of people. And it wasn't until I committed to, you know, surrounding my mindset. In the beginning, it was my mentors became the authors of the books that I read, and making sure at least 10 minutes a day I was doing this PD to help me get through that worry of what other people think. And when I say false evidence appearing real, I say that because 98, 99% of the things we worry about never actually happen. They're made up in our mind. Oh, this person's going to think this, or I may fail. I'm not good enough. It's all that negative self-talk. And if you go on social media, you put the news on, like that's the other thing is like, I'm a big person. I will stay in tune to what's going on in the world. But if you're constantly just watching the news all day, the sensationalism, it doesn't matter what side of the political fence you're on, but it's about politics and drama and murder and all this death. Like, of course, you're stressed out, worrying that life is horrible. You're
Yeah.
not thinking with an abundance mindset. So for me, I flip the script where my morning routine is very guarded. I spend a good hour doing my own mental mindset, intentional work. Then I go into exercise. So I'm primed that when people may say negative things, and I still get it today, some people might say, "Oh, is it easy for you?" No, I think the higher you try to go in success, the bigger the price tag, the
Yeah.
more critics, the more people are going to bring you down. So for me, I've become so mentally strong. And again, you can't compare your chapter 1 to somebody else's chapter 12. And I say that because if somebody's listening to this and feels like they're really struggling, this is a journey of 15 years of me getting to be able to think this way, and I still struggle, right? So I think it's a matter of those principles over emotions, not letting fear get in the way, recognizing that fear is something that often stops people, and you can't let people do that. I say when I speak, and you heard me, the wealthiest place on earth is the graveyard, right?
Yeah.
Full of goals and ideas and actions people don't act upon, and it's the truth. You can't let that fear get in your way. And the only way you don't, Dan, I really believe, is you have to pay the toll every day to work on your mindset. You have to be intentional with it. It doesn't just, you do it once and you can forget about it, because life will bring you down if you just kind of go through the motions of life. And I'm not like that. You have to lead your life to where you want to go, not accept it for what it is.
I love that. I love that. I've got two last questions with our
Yeah.
time here. One really talks about some of the practical exercises that you outline in the book and that you cover. If you had to like pick one that would be a good daily or weekly practice that somebody can do, which one do you think is going to be the most beneficial or transformational to
I
a
think
reader?
gratitude, practicing gratitude. I think we so often focus on what we don't have instead of focusing on what we do have. And it could be as simple like this morning. I remember just in my morning routine and gratitude and prayer and all that. I have food in my fridge. I have a healthy family. I'm recovering. I just had triple hernia surgery a month ago.
Oof.
I'm recovering. I'm recovering from that. Like my family's good. Like, just practice gratitude, because you can't be angry and grateful at the same time. And if you focus on what you do have and have the gratitude, it will put you in a good space to start taking those decisions to move forward.
Man, I appreciate you saying that. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I found
Yeah.
myself in times over my life where I'd be so focused on measuring myself against where I wanted to go and
Mm.
then looking at the people that were next to where I wanted to go and comparing myself to that all the time. And I would be like, I don't have this, I haven't done this, I haven't done enough. And that would become like the mental talk track for
Yeah.
me. And once I start to recenter myself and say, but look how far I've come, look at what I do have. I think it's a better frame of reference and kind of helps keep you motivated versus, comparing yourself against these people that are in chapter 12 versus chapter 1. I,
Right.
I love that.
Yes.
Um, Last question, man, and this is I know you do this all the time. You're a keynote speaker. You've spoken in front of crowds of 20,000 people, which is amazing to me, and you've impacted a lot of people through the events you do, through the books that you've written. This book here that's coming out, or that's actually coming out today. So congratulations on that. If someone reads this book, what is the one decision that you want them to make after reading this book?
I love it. I would say they know the answer, because there's something tugging in their heart right now, and it's different for everybody. For some, it may be your marriage. For some, it may be to be a better parent. For some of you, maybe to finally level up in your career, go for that promotion, start that side business. For some of you, it may be your health. Like I say, and I say on stage, I don't know what that is, but there's one decision in your life that you can make right now when you leave this room that will transform your life. And on the cover of my book, I say one decision, whereas I have it here, one decision can change everything. I write right on the cover because it starts the one decision. I can't read people's minds, but your gut, in my book, I talk about follow your gut, because your gut is pretty much never wrong. And there's something in your life, you know what you need to do. It's just time to rise up and make that decision and move forward.
I love that, man. And if you're watching this video, David's right. You're feeling it. You're feeling it right now. You're thinking about it. It's right there. You might want to mentally hide from it, but just don't. Take out a pen, pencil, scrap piece of paper, whatever you got in front of you. Write it down right now. Pause the video, do whatever you got to do. Write it down what that thing is for you. Put it on your desk, put it somewhere that you're going to have to look at it every single day. And then get up the courage just to take that first step to address it and make that decision and get on with the rest of your life being better and what you deserve.
Absolutely. And Dan, I want to add, because you said the word courage. The one decision away philosophy, when I define it, it's a choice made in the present moment backed by courage and faith to move you one step closer to your goals. And that's kind of it. But yeah, thank you.
I love it, man. No better place than that. David Atkins, I am looking forward to the book coming out and reading it. Thank you
Yes.
for being here, and I look forward to working with you in other ways in the future, my friend.
Absolutely. And guys, thank you. And a lot of raffles and prizes if you get the book, the launch this week. Thank you so much.